Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. This week we have Warren Buffett sharing a secret investment. We have some conspiracy theory news about the new influenza because obviously we have presidential elections coming up. And we also have things like gold and silver absolutely exploding. Let's go and get started. We have stocks absolutely exploding this week in the United States. Most hit record highs. The Dow Jones hit above 40,000 for the first time, finishing its 19th record close for the year. S&P 500, NASDAQ all positive. Canada also went up 0.46%. And some of the conspiracy theory news, the NIH, which is basically the primary health department in the United States that funds a lot of things that has to do with health, finally admitted officially that taxpayer-funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan after years of denials. Really funny also, if you guys look up during the 2020 pandemic, how all of a sudden the flu disappeared also. I mean, just amazing. We beat it in 2020, and then it came back, and now it's, like the normal numbers. Isn't that amazing? New Zealand and other conspiracy theory news. I love that meme. New Zealand is killing bees. There was a guys that I found in my conspiracy theory reel that the government is just going around killing bees in New Zealand. Some guy lost like $2 million without testing for, infections or plagues or, whatever it is that kills bees. But I thought it was unusual because you guys do realize that we need bees to grow food, right? So why would they just go to somebody's property and kill $2 million worth of bees for no reason? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it? And the Michigan governor, Gretchen, issues an emergency executive order over the influenza of the avian flu or avian influenza, because we got presidential elections. We gotta bring back those votes. Overseas market news: European markets are mostly mixed. We have Istanbul and also the Swiss market, the most positive there. Latin America mostly higher. The biggest market in Latin America being the Bovespa in Brazil went up 0.43%. Africa and the Middle East is mixed. And then in the far east, Asia, Australia, that area, we have the Hong Kong Hang Seng, most positive of all, but they were mostly generally positive. Bitcoin, not a whole lot of news in the crypto news other than the fact that a lot of corporations badmouth Bitcoin behind everybody's back and even in the mainstream news while they're buying it themselves. Bitcoin for the week is up 10.20%. It went to 66,885 as of Friday evening. In commodities, U.S. crude went up over 2.3%, 2.30, I should say, to 80.06. And then Brent, which is the international crude, went up 1.43% to 83.98. That is not the biggest news when it comes to commodities. However, the Brazil being the largest producer and exporter of orange juice now is running low on inventory, the lowest in the last 3 decades. If you guys remember that Florida had a really big problem with the weather, the hurricanes, in addition to plagues and things like that. So now Brazil has become the biggest producer and exporter. But, Florida's still the best. I'm from Florida, so, we got the one out there, what I'm saying? But it was really interesting because they're now dealing with climate conditions and also the plagues. You see, it's like one thing after the other. We had the cacao. Now the orange juice. Now we have wheat also. Wheat is up quite a bit. Highest level since July 31st, 2023, due to the fact that they had frosts in Russia, which is a major country that exports wheat globally. In addition to the wheat, we also have cacao. Cacao actually went down, not up. Remember, cacao hit a record high, and cacao went down 19%. Biggest intraday decline since 1980, and they're still having problems in West Africa. Remember that the 3 countries in West Africa actually produce about 60-70% of the world's cacao, and there's a huge opportunity now for Brazilian farmers that have made fortunes exporting things like sugar. They're going to start planting cacao, even though it takes a few years for the cacao to end up growing, but they're now going to start selling that as well. Gold, huge week for gold and silver. Gold went up 2.31% to $2,415.40. That hit a record high. Silver is at its highest level since 2013. So 23, about 11 years, 12 years, that hit 31.58. It went up over 11%, almost 12% this week. And I'm still a big gold and silver bug, more silver than gold, especially considering that silver is the highest conductive metal in the world, better than copper, for example. So, I'm sorry if you guys can hear the dogs. They're going crazy right now, but you know, big old mastiffs, Tibetan mastiffs. But India and the solar industry represent 35% of demand. Just India and the solar industry. So we also have the EVs, the batteries and electric vehicles as well. And we also have a situation where the silver market is actually in a deficit right now. So it's in a situation where they're not starting up new mines, which can take years and years to be able to develop. And the demand is continuing to increase and increase. So at some point, these things are going to explode, especially when the central bank of the United States decides to decrease the interest rates, because then everybody's starting to get a sniff that things are really going well as the economy as everybody thought they were. And then when they start dropping the interest rates, that's when, you know, gold and silver are going to explode. Financial and banking news, out of control inflation in the United States. We should say Biden inflation. A family of four now needs $178,000 to live comfortably in the United States. Here in Colombia, I can go out and buy some sushi for $80 for 3-4 people. Just throwing that out there. Tuesday, Australia government announced the second consecutive budget surplus on Tuesday. So they have over $6 billion this quarter. And the U.S. Producer Price Index increased more than expected last month. So we have the consumer inflation, right? The CPI, Consumer Price Index. But we also have the PPI, which is the Producer Price Index, meaning the cost at which it takes to produce goods or services. So if the producer inflation is going up at the production level, imagine what's going to happen when we get to the consumer level, right? So that's going to continue to increase. The German inflation inched up in April, 2.4%. The wholesale price inflation in India also rose 1.26%. And the U.S. inflation, the CPI now I'm talking about in the U.S. went, let me start over. The U.S. inflation slowed in April after several months of a lot higher inflation than expected, which is the CPI on the consumer level. So that's a good thing. The New York Fed is saying that U.S. credit card default rates are hitting their highest level since 13 years, beginning in 2024. So kind of, and this is why I like to do these videos. So picturing the panorama, right? The United States still the biggest economy in the world. And in that U.S. economy, almost 70% is consumer spending. So if consumers are now starting to hit the highest rate of default on their credit cards since 2000, and I have it written here, give me a second, 2013 years, that means that the consumers aren't doing well. So that means 70% of the economy in the United States is no bueno. Cumulative inflation under Trump was 8% in 4 years. The cumulative inflation under Biden to date, which is about 3.5 years or so, is at 21.3%. Cumulative disposable income under Trump is at 12.4%, while cumulative disposable income under Biden is 2.9%. So you can see the differences between the two administrations. And one of the things, remember that this is the government numbers. And as I explained to you guys last week, remember that they manipulate the inflation numbers that are the official numbers of the government, right? In the beginning of the year, for example, they removed the inflation number for coffee. Why? Because coffee has exploded 40, 50, 60% since last year. So keep that in mind. These are the quote unquote official numbers, not the real numbers, because you guys know what happened at Five Guys, right? Should I drop the story? Let me know. I'll tell you guys next week, because some of you guys are tired of hearing of it. Not a lot of political news and economic news. The unemployment in the UK went to 4.3% in the first 3 months of March. So that inched up a little bit. The Japan economy contracted annualized 2% in quarter one. Remember now that Germany is the third largest economy in the world. Instead of Japan, Japan has moved into fourth. And initial claims for unemployment in the United States drifted back lower this week. First-time filings are at 222,000, 1,000 above the estimate. So the consumer's not doing well. Credit card defaults, we just talked about that. And now the initial claims for unemployment are starting to inch up as well. So, you can see that some of the numbers of the economy are starting to show that things aren't doing well. Corporate news. Carnival, which is the world's largest cruise company, announced that they have 100% of the ships now on Starlink, the internet that Elon Musk is providing. Netflix and the NFL signed a 3-year deal to live show games on the Netflix platform. I believe it's just the Christmas Day games. Walmart, which is still the biggest retailer in the world and the largest contractor, I don't know if that's the right word in English, but the largest private employer of people in the world, they went up almost 7% after hitting a 52-week high. The revenue beat estimates in addition to reporting that their e-commerce exploded 22%. Although they are cutting hundreds of jobs in the corporate headquarters, in addition to about 65% of its stores to be serviced by automation. So you can see that they're lowering costs by getting rid of people. And the Walton family, which is the family that owns just under 50% of Walmart stock, decided to sell $1.5 billion in stock. Now, if you guys remember what I always told you, don't pay attention to what they say, pay attention to what they do. Why would the family all of a sudden now be selling stock? Volkswagen is the latest automaker to step back from the all-electric plan, admitting that it needs more plug-in hybrids due to slowing EV sales. Microsoft, a judge admitted that they needed to pay $242 million after they're using a patent from another company. Microsoft likes to steal stuff from other people. And GameStop, the meme coin, exploded. Shares ended up 74%. And then after that, the short sellers lost $1 billion, and then the corporation decided to sell millions of shares, which sent the stock crashing. So probably a little bit of manipulation there. Singapore Airlines named the world's best airline in 2023, by Skytrax. Record operating profit of almost $3 billion. Singapore dollars, it's about $2 billion or so dollars in the U.S. And the net profit exploded 24% higher as well. I don't know if you guys have seen the suites that Singapore offers. It's like your own little apartment, little studio apartment. And Emirates now even has their own showers, which is actually amazing. The Warren Buffett announced that Chubb Confidential stock that they purchased for 2 consecutive quarters. It's a Swiss insurance company founded in 1882. They now are the second largest holder of this insurance company. And Reddit is up over 10% after they announced an agreement with OpenAI. After now OpenAI is going to offer some of their services to the Reddit customers, or Reddit, users, we should say. And Reddit is going to offer the information to OpenAI to be able to train their new models. Speaking of OpenAI and technology, they came out with the new version called ChatGPT 4.0, which is faster, improved capabilities, blah, 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 blah. Remember, AI is going to take over the world. And in trade news, the Biden administration has decided to tack on $18 billion worth of imports on a lot of Chinese products, specifically Chinese EVs, 100% tariff, solar cells, 50%, and steel and aluminum as well, much higher than before. And in international events, the prime minister from Slovakia was shot and almost killed. Remember that he speaks against the kind of Europe and U.S.-led things that we should vote for, like the Ukraine war. And in global warming, Chileans are facing their most intense cold snap in nearly 70 years, the longest cold wave ever recorded in the capital of Santiago. But remember, global warming. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.